Boone here eating a carrot. I see your nose, big man. Glitter everywhere. Somehow in my house, 200 feet away from a car. Okay, so I was a little bit worried about being able to move my power seats without a battery, which wasn't necessarily the worry, but also without my harness connected to ECU or whatever various things in the engine. Found a video by Blake's Garage, a shout out to him. So we got a 12-volt power tool battery here, took the fuse out of the appropriate seat, put power from the battery into it, grounded it on the body ground. And if we bring ourselves over here, we find that we do indeed have seat power. So again, this is without a battery, without a harness. I can now take these out, which is great. Chapstick. So minus tools, here's our take underneath seats. You got some high chew, some change. We'll have to take that change to the treasurer, their national change shortage. And just lots of crumbs, glitter, dirt, so on and so forth. The carpet itself looks like it's in pretty good condition. So I feel like all this should clean up. Obviously got new floor mats already too, instead of these little weird cut ones and the one size fits all fronts. So looking super open in here. Let's have some door cards off. It's actually funny, I left them off because I was gonna do stereo stuff. And I'm just now remembering that the rears don't have speakers in them, so I could have just put those back on. We got stuff off. Headliner's all good. I remember a while ago I re-dyed the rear deck. Rear seat leather looks good. Heck yeah, we need to get this out of here too. That's a relic of the past. There we go. No seat leverage.
Oh gosh.
You okay?
Got it.
So two front seats are out. See, the driver's side's in a little bit worse condition. Obviously the bolster is super common here, and you can even see where the metal is poking through on the bottom and the side. This is what you're always rubbing on the driver's side as you're getting in the left-hand drive car. And then passenger side, not too surprising either, and that one poked through just a little bit too. So I did get some replacements. One of the bottom pads does still have the common tear in the bottom bolster, but both back pieces are great. So I think I'm gonna get 2 new seat pads for the bottom, see if I can salvage some of the leather that is used and get pieced into where the bolster is torn. The bolster that has a tear in it is another original driver's seat bolster. So it's this side. So maybe if I were to use the leather right here, someone could stitch in this piece to the other pad, and then we'd have 2 perfect sides and be all good. So we're gonna see what we can do, putting some seats together. Classic case of a junkyard car that was still in good condition, saving a car that is still deemed to be used on the road. So, and also the passenger seat back does not recline, which means there's a broken gear inside of its motor. Another super common thing. I have to take it apart and see if I can find any chunks to figure out what color it was, order the replacement, stick it back in there with new grease, and it should function just fine again. $80 in plastic that I'll be using to replace. Here's the green and green, and then the pink one over there. replacing while I'm in there. This new piece is on, here's the old one. Use the old one to press the new one on just a little bit past where the tip of the spline goes. Okay. Blam. So there's actually supposed to be a little metal cap that goes on top of this spindle, kind of like a snap ring that just snaps itself in. When I was going to do the other one, it had it on it. This one did not. It had already fallen off with the broken one. So I found this one in the grease right now. On the pink one, I just shot it off in the distance somewhere and hopefully I can find it. But this was just sitting in this gearbox ready to get munched up. U-shaped ring right there. Yeah, let me try to find this other one. All right, bear witness to what happened. That's what magnets are good for. There's our circlip. I could not find it. I figured it was in the area, so I started doing the metal detector technique on the ground everywhere on my camouflage blanket that these seats are sitting on, and took a look. Lo and behold, the magnet found it. So this saved me a parts search and wait for shipping / junkyard run to find another little circlip. Other than that, these things work great and are heated, which is nice, and they will stay heated. The other good thing about these is the pads come off super easy. This piece and this piece disconnect from the seat super easily. All very modular, which is very convenient for swapping out other seats donations per se. So next up on the cleaning list was back seat. So getting this thing back in after taking it off for some other work. Naturally, some things were left underneath the seat. That always happens. So cleaning that up as to not ignore it and leave it behind. And some of the creases of the leather seat that I wouldn't be able to reach when it's back in, including the front brim that had some weird drips on it. Underneath the seat had stuff stuck to it, seat belts and so on. So once it was in, it was time to vacuum out the creases and get to treating the leather with Hybrid Solutions Leather Mist. Cleaner and conditioner, so dealing with the bottom and the back obviously as well, giving it a good wipe down, getting rid of some of that shine and bringing back some of that natural matte leather. Then moving on to the floors that I had been staring at for months. It felt great to finally get rid of these floor mats and vacuum up all these crumbs, sunflower seeds, and that haichu wrapper. And all of this in prep before shampooing the carpets, because the thing we were going to do next was still going to drop some stuff on the carpet, and that is audio stuff. Being being as this is an E36 series, you might be familiar with BavSound already and what they do, and that is making kits to swap directly into your vehicle to either upgrade the system or just replace old stuff, which would still be an upgrade. But they've always been an E36 blessing, having a kit that's completely plug and play, literally with all the plugs and all the speakers that swap directly in. And again, a blessing in that, and who I've always chosen for my E36s. So at that, shout out to Jeremy Whittle for this hookup. From there, I picked a simple Sony stereo that pushed about 50 watts per corner, and on to prepping the interior for install. First thing I found was one of my rear door cards actually was missing one of their lower cups, so we'll have to get that sorted later. But cleaning was what was most important here. So removing some of the odd stains that were left over, and then moving to full cleaning, which the center door cups are leather. For that, we use Hybrid Solutions Leather Mist once again to clean and condition. And then for the top and the bottom, we moved to Hybrid Solutions Inside Job, which has graphene and ceramic qualities to help protect everything as well. From there, we moved to cleaning the inside of the doors, and although you'll never see it, I know it was there, and a cleaner car is a happier mind. Then obviously replacing any broken clips, common E36 thing, and what is necessary to not have quite as rattly of an interior and have solid mounted door cards, because we all know that's usually a problem. Once everything got mounted up and was freshly cleaned underneath and on top, it was time to move on to installing the speakers. First up on removing the speakers from the door cards is simply unscrewing the retaining clips on the back, and they fall right out. From there, normally you would have to reuse these plastic grills that the speakers go into and remove the old ones and put the new ones in, but BavSound actually offers their own speaker grills and cups that these retrofit right into the door cards and use the same screwed retaining clips. Cool thing about these as well is similar to the old school Harman Kardon speaker covers that spelled that you had a upgraded system. These BavSound ones have their own logos on the front, so that aside from getting brand new plastic going into your car, which is always great, it also shows the upgraded system that you have, and it's cool to have little custom bits like that. Per the instructions, the mid-ranges were glued into the grills, the tweeters clipped in and held just fine, and from there they were installed. Simple as that. Only thing left to do was cleaning these up, and again we had some odd stains that we had to take care of. For this, we're using Hybrid Solutions Mist Interior Detailer. I really had to scrub these ones, and you'll see in the after here as well that it had specific spots where it had worked its way through all the wax and grease. So what I did after that is just coated the entire door card to get it cleaned evenly and looking fresh. From there, moving to the center cups once again with Hybrid Solutions Leather Mist to get those cleaned and conditioned and looking uniform and matte like leather should. And that was it. Easy cleaning, easy install, and though I don't have power to experience these right now, I've used them before, and as seamless as the install was, I can imagine it's going to be fantastic. Moving on to the other door card, repeat of everything else, replacing broken clips, swapping in the speakers, making sure that the logos are straight once screwed in, and that's all there is to it. As simple as this install was, I just had to clean up the door cards, but all of our front door card speakers are now installed. With no stubborn stains to fight, although it could, it's time to move back to the Hybrid Solutions Inside Job with that ceramic and graphene inclusion for a nice shine and protection. This is what I ended up finishing all the door cards with, aside from if I had crazy stains to really scrub into. So from there, again, leather mist on the center door cups. And once completed with that, use some compressed air to blow out all of the cracks and areas that you can't quite reach with a towel to get it perfectly clean and time to reinstall. And for installation, again, as easy as a plug and play system as this is, of the 4 possible plugs, there is one that can get reversed on the wires that come out of the door, but in the end, it can actually only go in one way. So it's impossible to mess it up once everything is actually plugged in. Pushed back in with the clips, fresh and not broken. Cleaned up any final bits that my hands decided to touch that got it uncleaned once again. And aside from the one piece of trim next to the airbag there that I forgot to install for this shot, we were good to go and moved on to the floor speakers. So this is why I say I decided to wait to shampoo the carpets until all of the speakers were out, and as well you'll see the cabin air filter, because a lot of stuff would be spilled here in the future, hidden underneath things or just needing extra cleaning. Although I wasn't going to shampoo underneath that cover, it was nice to still get everything that was underneath it and around it or that would spill out of it eventually cleaned up. Completed the passenger side door card and then moved on to the floor speaker once again. So here I recommend taking out that top cardboard-ish piece before you take out the side piece, as you might see that I broke a clip and punched a hole in the speaker. Fortunately, it didn't matter with this speaker, but it's smart to take things out in the appropriate order or look up how you're supposed to do things, which some of us tend to forget. As well, glitter spilled out everywhere. Speaker was installed, and pro tip, it's a perfect time in this moment to deal with replacing your cabin air filter. This is the way that we all originally did it, just yanking it out, but there is a smarter way, which I'll show here next. Already have the filter out. So this whole electrical thing can come out simply by putting a screwdriver in here, pushing on it. I think this is already kind of out for me, but you push in here against that, allowing this whole thing to push up, at which point that's what you're pushing on in the middle. Those two tabs then can slide up. You then get this thing out of the way, and suddenly you have all of this access for the air filter. Here, my new one. This now more out of the way. Definitely didn't do this last time. I just did the classic break it in half method. All right, take a little pause, shove some things around, force some things around, and I didn't do full breaks, just the tiny little ones. Installed. Can't tell what you can see, but installed. So once the blood was all back out of my head, it was time to move back to the rear speakers for the final speakers to install. These 2 screws, remove them, and then Bavsound actually includes new screws, 4 of which to install their speakers. I do believe these screws were maybe a little bit too big because it took me about 15 minutes of screwing to get these all back in, which is a little tough, but they're definitely not going anywhere. But aside from install, super easy, plug and play, long enough cords to reach up and plug them in first, and they have their own retaining clips so you can place them into position and then screw everything in without having to hold too much. And obviously it's much easier if you have fold down rear seats. From here, you might have seen on the previous grills, but I'll show you here on these grills, there's a lot of old decrepit foam that I took off just to keep that clean and looking nice because it's just falling off in the speakers anyway. Vacuumed up a bunch of glitter, no surprise here, and then moved on to the harness. Here you can see me using some heat shrink on all my cable connections, as well installing the frame for the stereo, getting everything plugged in. This is super easy to do, no different than any install with the right harness. Install the trim. That was a little bit loose. I'm gonna have to look back at that, but stereo's installed, everything done on that front. And since everything that I predicted that could spill messes on the rest of the car was done, it was time to do final cleanup on things like the center console, coloring in a deep scratch on that leather piece there as well, and moving on to shampooing the carpets. For this, I'm using Turtle Wax's carpet and mat cleaner. I've received like boxes of this in the past, so I think this is about a 2 or 3 year old bottle that their logo is probably updated by now, but still worked fantastic and got this stuff clean. So it was nice to have an interior now that smelled fresh and clean, though it will always still smell kind of like crayons as these old cars do. It'll now smell like clean crayons. So up next is the comedic relief portion of this episode, and one I can't say I'm proud of, but I'm also not finished of at the time of making this episode, so I don't really care. So classic Segi glove box, but also one that was delaminating. So I decided to go house construction mode on this portion of the car and use some liquid nails. So got this clamped up with the liquid nails inside. Also used a 2x4 with what do you call it, a ratchet strap to try to emulate a little bit bending in the opposite direction that it needed. And ultimately here, as you just saw the next day, it pulled right back apart. So that last shot there is as it actually sits while I'm recording this episode for numerous days in an attempt to actually get it to stick together. So don't judge too hard, because I don't care. Anyway, back to the serious business here. So we had a steering wheel that was in terrible condition. The leather had been worn through on top and was pretty scuzzy on the bottom. So regardless, one of the coolest things I think about these old E36 M3s is the steering wheel comes with tri-color stitching in the M colors, the BMW M color. So regardless, I wanted to clean that up and see that to prove that it could still look fantastic. And it does, and I love that. But clean up the rest of the steering wheel just to demo this new Hybrid Solutions inside job cleaning solution, and it was great, but ultimately that wasn't the end goal here for the install. This is actually an old shot before I cleaned up the interior, by the way, when you see the stuff in the carpet. So next up was removing this steering wheel, which we've all seen done before. You can find on YouTube, so I don't need to detail, even though I'm already talking way too long about it. Simply removing the airbag, getting it out of the way, disconnecting it, unbolting the steering wheel, which took a lot of effort with a few different size tools, and then taking the airbag wiring off, wiring in a resistor to emulate the airbag for the future so I don't get a light, finding glitter underneath everything, cleaning it up, installing the adapter, and then onto the steering wheel I was going to use. So it's from the company and friend that I've used in my E28, as you can see there, Renown USA out of Oakland, California. So this is their new Champion horn pad steering wheel, made in Italy. And I was super excited when Scott brought this one out because I love the look of a horn pad. And also I love the look of old ATELLER Volante steering wheels, which we use in a lot of our old 80s cars, as well as the M-Tech 2 steering wheel. I feel like it almost kind of emulates in a small way, which is great in E36s, but this was a new wheel of Scott's at Renown, and I was super excited to get this thing in the car. One thing I might do in the future is he is coming out with a motorsport version, and what that means with his is that it has tri-colored stitching like the old steering wheel in this car, and I might have to swap to that in the future. So with seats going back in the car, the one thing I was most excited to test is to see if my gear replacement from odometer gears worked to make the back of the passenger seat adjustable again, and happily it did. With my 12-volt battery plugged back into the fuse box, I got these moved around back and installed, including the seat belts here, because that's one thing I forgot to clean. And this is an interesting piece as well. I didn't know these existed, little caps for the front bolts, so you can't see the body color underneath them. You might have noticed previously too, I had not cleaned these seats yet, and I wanted to wait till they were going back in the car. So from here, again, using the Hybrid Solutions leather mist cleaning and conditioning on these bad boys, looking awesome. And this is a moment that I was so excited for, because suddenly I have clean front seats. So I got to keep these things fresh and clean as long as I can, and I'm super stoked to have Turtle Wax as the sponsor, because they are here for that. I can go get things dirty, and when I come back or when I need to, I can have them clean, refreshed, and ready for the next adventure. So keeping it fresh. Last but not least for interior install was floor mats, and ones that actually fit properly for the car. So I went with WeatherTech, who I think is actually located kind of near Turtle Wax in Illinois. But anyway, love that the rear seat for the full molded ones had a covering for the driveline tunnel. For the front, I just went with their all-weather ones because I prefer those a little bit more for my own feet. They fit a little bit weird, and I'm gonna have to check and make sure I didn't get coupe longer ones, but either way, they look way better than before. And from here, with final cleanup, it was time to revel in what I had created, and I was so excited for this point once again, because suddenly I have a fully complete interior with no leather tears, completely clean. I don't know, man. Again, it was just a full circle moment to see everything complete, clean, speakers replaced, ready to bump some music. I still have to install that shifter down there, yes, waiting for parts. But yeah, the cleanup on this was nuts to see. This is a car you want to get in, you want to touch, you want to enjoy. Can't beat it, man. Man. Yeah, it's sick.
That dude's too deep in the game.
Turtle Wax, dedicated to the drive.